All right, we are live. Here we are. Welcome, everybody, to the marketplace of ideas where the finest takes are sold. I am Sal, and with me, as always, are our finest vendors, VJ and Brennan. How are we feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good. I didn't get much sleep last night, and then I had to wake up early today for work, so I'm a little sleep deprived. But we popped a Zen in. Should be enough to for me to spit some takes today.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm feeling good. It's been a long wait since the last show, so I've been chomping at the bit to finish the draft.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I've been
we
very excited, but I think
Mhm.
we should start by maybe talking about the two big signings today. Big, quote unquote.
Absolutely. So, first of all, the first shocker of the day was Benedict Mathurin agreeing to a 2-year deal with the New Orleans Pelicans. How are we feeling about this? Kind of a surprise one.
Go ahead, VJ.
Um,
You can go first.
no, I was just gonna say I feel bad for Mathurin because he was on that Pacers roster that went to the finals, and you go from playing with Halliburton, and then you're on the tanking Pacers, and then you end up on the Clippers, and the Clippers are the Clippers. He didn't even get to play with Harden,
Mm-hmm.
and then he did what he could in the limited time he had on the Clippers, and then I'm glad the Clippers didn't re-sign him, but when you take a step back, the purgatoriness, I guess, if you can describe it that way, between the Pelicans and the Clippers is like so similar. Um, and he just goes from one place of purgatory to another. And yeah, I think there's a good player in there in a similar role to what he had on the Pacers, but I think the NBA is moving so quickly away from these kinds of players, and it kind of sucks to see like guys that are talented um kind of get pushed out because the league is just not in that space anymore.
He's an interesting player because, like, does he give you like really good defense? No. Does he pass the ball and connect things? No. I think that's the thing with Mathurin. The biggest negative on him is he typically averages the same amount of turnovers that he does assists. There's a few seasons where he's had more turnovers than assists, but he is a pretty good play finisher, and I think that's why it worked on the Pacers. In that finals run, is they had Halliburton obviously, and then Neesmith, Mathurin, Toppin. Like all these guys were really good play finishers, and I think the benefit of playing around Halliburton and, like you said, not getting to play around Harden last year is he doesn't have to think that much, right? Like just shoot the ball goes in. I do think he was a little unlucky with his shot making on the Clippers. If you look at his shooting, he was 37%, kind of career 3-point shooter, and now he's down in like the 20s in the small sample of the Clippers. I think there's a player in there. I think I took him in the startup draft in
Mm-hmm.
fantasy. He's moved around a bit now, which we can talk about. But I think as far as like the real world trade, this isn't very interesting to me. I guess I get why he did it. I mean, the agent speak here on the screen is it gets him to free agency faster, but I would be a little concerned if I had stocks in him in fantasy that this is really
Mm-hmm.
the best he could do. And we keep seeing guys get squeezed. Like, I don't know what kind of deal he's really going to get next year. And I don't know how the Pelicans are really going to optimize his game as a play finisher to,
Mm-hmm.
go out and get a big contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add there is initially when I saw it, I was like, God, if I was a Pelicans fan, I'd want to fucking kill myself. But then I like kept thinking about it, and I was kind of just like, they kind of have like an amalgamation of all these guys that are maybe good in a vacuum, or maybe good in a very specific context, that I feel like you could trade for them. The other thought I had was maybe this makes them slightly more able to trade Trey Murphy like midseason if he can up his value because he's a wing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, because like they're in an odd asset situation. So um, and they've been talking about this Trey Murphy for 4 first round picks nonsense for a while now. I think this kind of opens them up to do a Trey Murphy trade. But Sal, what do you think as a former Ben Mathurin holder
You
on
know,
your fantasy roster?
I did have an appreciation for pure math while he was on the Healers. He was a hard player to pick games for because there were the games where he could go off, give you 30 fantasy points, provide you like a huge boost for the night, but you couldn't get that consistently enough. There was also so many games where he would leave you in the single digits. Like it never felt like there was a consistency to him from a fantasy perspective. So my only thing is maybe with the Pelicans being a little more ass, he can see the floor a little bit more, maybe find a little bit more of that consistency and, maybe give Feathers a little boost this year.
Well, I do want to talk about the Feathers piece, and this is an interesting history for the player. So I took him in the 4th round of the startup draft, which we'll spend a podcast talking about winners and losers of startup. But then I traded him to Sal, and that was the Desmond Bane trade. So I got Bane, Yabu, Gary Trent, and 2/3, and Sal. I think this is actually a pretty good trade. You got back Kobe. Ben Mathurin, and then 2 second-round picks. Not a bad deal, in hindsight.
Yeah.
And then you turned Mathurin into Kevin Durant in January of this year. So it was Keldon Johnson, Ben Mathurin, Will's 2027 first, Flop's 2026 second for KD. So I think it's kind of similar to what I was looking for in my Tatum deal. Like you turned a player you had a hard time picking games for into, Kevin Durant. You don't really need to worry too much about which game you're picking week to week, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think he's got a chance for a big fantasy glow up this year, but again, it's the Pelicans. You can never really be too sure what's going on with them or their players. There's always something wrong. Prayers up for all DeJounte Murray fans in the chat. Do we have any more thoughts on Big Math before we head over to the surprise signing of the evening?
The last thing I wanted to say was the Pelicans have a seemingly bad health team, and they've had a history of injuries. So there's a good chance for Feathers that, somebody gets injured on their roster, and then Mathurin's playtime goes way up and his fantasy production goes up. And I think that might open up a midseason trade opportunity because I think at least I'm expecting Feathers to try and tank this year, maybe intentionally, unintentionally. I'm expecting some potential tankage from him, but I think it might be time to talk about the Come God. I'm very excited to talk about this.
All right, next up, Jonathan Kuminga has agreed to a 2-year, $13 million deals with the Timberwolves. Kind of a shocker. It seemed like there was a lot of momentum for him going to the Lakers or LA or something like that. This kind of came out of nowhere. So how do we feel about this? What does this mean for his fantasy?
I love this one. When this happened, I got really excited. I think the public perception of Kuminga, I think Steve Kerr has kind of made him out to be this selfish player. He just chucks shots. He was really inefficient to begin his career, so I totally hear that. But when you go and you look at his Hawks numbers when he moved to the Hawks middle of last year, he kind of turned into more and more of a winning player, and I think he flashed that before the trade as well. Before he got benched again, weirdly, I thought he was playing a more well-rounded game, and he took that with him to the Hawks. I thought he fit in really well at the Hawks. Ball movement, defense, transition game. The only lineups where Zachary looked good was really with Kuminga, kind of going jumbo forward. So I'm interested to see what it looks like with Jaden McDaniels. I think this makes them, they were already a contender. This makes them an even stronger contender. But I think the fun, before you get into the expectations, it's just a fun fit. LaMelo and Ant with him and Jaden and Rudy, like offense and defense. I think that's going to be a really fun team.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the fit because Brennan covered it. I think LaMelo being a great playmaker gives Kuminga a lot of opportunities if he's more willing to buy into a role player-esque situation. I had bad opinions of Kuminga for a multitude of reasons. Him being a Warrior didn't help my
my
perception of him. I also have been a big proponent of feel and winning your minutes. He obviously hasn't shown that he can do either of those things, but when you zoom out, he was on the G League Ignite And then he went to the G League Ignite situation. Obviously, like we know they didn't have very many good coaches, or they didn't have good coaching. We've seen that across all their players, really. And then you go into the Warrior situation where Kerr is somebody that does play rookies depending on how he feels about them. But if you look at the rookies or like the young players that he's willing to play, they're all players that are already high feel, and they already are like willing to buy in. And from Kaminga's perspective, I understand his reluctance to become a role player when you're like a really young player. Like, obviously, I can sit here and say, dude, you're not going to be a star. But from his perspective, why would you not think that you can be a star when he's been a star his whole life? The other side of it is Kerr is not spending enough time with him to make him like a better player. The Warriors don't have much interest in like developing players to become who they need to be. They are better at like identifying the existing talent and fitting them into their system. Then you go into the Hawks, and like you said, Brennan, he started to look better, and that's probably the first time, maybe in his life, that he had a coach that was willing to spend the time with him to try and make him better. Obviously, Quinn Snyder ended up benching him later on, but Quinn Snyder might be the first good coach that's like actually spent time with him to try and make him a better player for the NBA. Them being willing to let him go kind of makes sense if you look at their roster and the number of wings they have. And also, like, they don't necessarily have the time and the space to give him to grow. And like, teams don't really have most teams don't have the financial space or the time to give them. Minnesota, I think, is going to be a great opportunity for him because he has a good coach. They have the financial space and the play time to offer him because of their roster situation. And he gets to play with players that complement him really well in Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball, as well as Rudy and Jaden. I think what's going to be important for him is to chuck threes and play defense on top of being the inside the paint play finisher with LaMelo and Ant. But I think this is actually a great fit. I'm really happy for Parm because he's held on real strong through a lot of rough times. And I'm excited for Parm because even though I own his pick, I'm excited for Parm because he never wavered. And also because I love it when somebody like really believes in something and puts their stake in it and they like see it through. And I'm glad that Parm gets a real opportunity to see this through.
I do want to add there though, because I agree. Shouts to Parm. Super excited for Parm. But I was looking at Jonathan Kuminga's trade history in the league, and Parm kind of got him at a buy low. He didn't actually draft Kuminga, which I didn't know at the time. So Kuminga went in the 8th round of the startup draft by Fatty. So Fatty took Kuminga originally. And then Fatty and Flop made one of their mini trades where Flop got Kuminga and Fatty's 2025 second for Robert Williams. So, classic Fatty Flop trade there. And then in July of 2025, so 2 off seasons ago, Parm traded with Flop. Parm obviously gets Kuminga, and he gave up Jake LaRavia and then Karg's 2025 second and Flop's 2026 second. So, obviously Parm has held on, but I think I do want to give Parm credit too. He got Kuminga on the buy low, and it could have been really easy to just sell low too after that buy low. But again, that history just kind of surprised me. For whatever reason, he's felt like a picks player for longer than 2 years. I was a little surprised to see him have this much movement. I do want to go back to the team fit. I do think there are some interesting questions. Can Jaden hold up as a true 4 now with Randall gone? I mean, say what you will about Randall's defense, but he did have a big power forward body. And I do think teams are trying to, whether it's double big or just having a heavier 4 playing with 3 skill players. Like, I think you're seeing that more and more. So that'll be interesting for him. And I think, the Sixers were tied to, I can't think of his name. Matt Lloyd is the GM with the Timberwolves, and they get a lot of credit for their young talent and who they draft and things like that. But when you look at their bench, like I definitely think they're a contender, but they're going to be relying on some young players and already having a question about how big their starting lineup can be. And then you look at Behringer is really their only 5 behind them, on the bench, and they don't really have too many like proven fours. Like Trey Lyles is probably their most experienced four coming off the bench. That's going to be something I keep an eye on. Is Kuminga and McDaniel enough, to kind of work with size? They definitely have the length, right? That's not a question. But I could see him getting beat up down low quite a bit, depending on the team, of course.
Yeah,
makes sense. But Trey Lyles, I believe, is a waiver guy. And last week, Sex Ferguson requested some waiver stats from me, and I have had the patience to hold on to those stats for the podcast. And I was initially thinking I'll just drop it in the first episode, but I was advised by our great producer to hold on to it, and we have them for this episode. So we're going to talk through some waiver stats. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. So Blake Wesley is the guy that's been wavered the most at 8 times. I think he's out of the league now, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Second is Aaron Holiday, but second there's like 4 other players that also fit there. The graph's all up there. But Blake Wesley is our most wavered player. Congratulations, Blake Wesley. You're appreciated, but not appreciated quite enough to keep on a roster, apparently. And then we can see who waivers the most in our league. And I think this will come as a surprise to nobody by a wide margin at 171 waiver claims. It's Mr. Ballersby, of which he has won 129. Second is me at 77, which makes sense considering I've been dog shit for 3 years and I've won 59 of them. And next up is Sal, 78, of which he's won 54, and then Parm at 61, which notice his efficiency there, and then Samuel at 72, which he hasn't won many. I'm curious to hear from him why he thinks that's the case. I wonder how much of it is Samuel keeps up very closely with the league, and so if he sees somebody pop off, he just puts in a claim for them. But then there's maybe other people that are also putting in claims for those guys. And then finally, we have our claim efficiency, which is the next graphic. And you'll see that Parm is our most efficient waiver guy at 83.6. Next up is me at 76%. Baller at 75%, but considering his volume, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
crazy.
That's at 69, Sal, congratulations, and then Samuel at 68. I think the most interesting thing for me is if you go back to the previous one, Baller and Sal are 2 of our contenders, in at least Sal in previous years.
Daniel too. I would have put Daniel up there as well. Right?
Yeah.
He was one of the top teams.
Yeah. So I think it does show that for guys that don't have an absolutely loaded roster like Will does, there does seem to be at least some correlation between, the number of waiver claims you're making and how successful you are. At the very least, this shows me who are the people that are actively paying attention to the league and actively keeping the fantasy league in mind. So I think these stats are interesting. Thank you, Sex Ferguson, for the idea. And the hope is that for every episode we'll have one fun stat, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because
can I just say something really quick that I think is interesting? No Sauce God here, which I just find interesting because when we looked at the trade frequency, and I know part of that is because he's not I don't think Sauce was one of the founders. He took over a team.
No. Yeah.
He wasn't one of the higher trade frequency teams. And so when you look at Sauce, I think you're always going to have to kind of compare Ty, Sauce, and Falk, right? Because they both got inherited bad teams.
Yep.
Ty is just selling everything he can for picks, right? That's pretty clear strategy. Falk makes the most trades, since he's come in. Mm-hmm. Sauce is kind of in between, and he has this, little self-proclaimed, but I do agree with him. He's pretty good at finding waiver guys, and so maybe it's a quality over quantity thing for him. But I was a little surprised to not see him here, because he's kind of not. I just expected him to be an outlier on one of these, given his roster, but he's not.
I think the one reason why that might be is because, as you pointed out, Sauce has not been the other 4 owners, with exception of Sal here, have been around for a while. Sal, even though I say it's an exception, he was here from day one, and then he wasn't for a little bit, and he was back on. So if you consider all of that in totality, I think it kind of. Sorry, my cat's been like Apollo's been going fucking low, going fucking nuts.
Oh,
so
shit.
that's why I've been like moving around. He's like attacking my feet and like attacking my back. But yeah, I think it kind of makes sense. But it is interesting, I think, when we talk about like Sauce God, because he is one of our higher transaction players, and I should also give him a shout out. The fantasy points per minute idea was actually from him, because he was describing to me how he would basically use the fantasy points per minute to identify waiver guys that could be good, because if an injury happens or the coach is like, this guy's good, then the fantasy points per minute is like a good reflection of like, if this guy's minutes increase, then he's going to be a great producer. So yeah, shout out Sauce God, because he basically invented fantasy points per minute.
I feel like a lot of the website and
Shout
like
out
what we
Sauce.
built been a lot of Sauce God suggestions.
The casino,
Yeah,
he's
casino's a big one.
yeah.
So, oh my God, he did the casino?
This is concept.
Yeah.
He was kind of joking about the gambling thing, and I was like, I can do that. And then he was joking about the stock market thing, and I was like, I can do that. But yeah, both of those were in fact Sauce God. And then I will say that I'm going to add the standard deviation for player fantasy points per game soon, which I think will also come in handy when we're talking about which players are hard to pick for.
Yeah, and when we get to that strategy pod and we have that stat available, I'd be really interested in like, is there an ideal team comp? Like, do you want so many guys that are consistent versus so many guys that can get highs and lows, and you just pick the highs? It's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited for our future episodes.
Absolutely. So, is there anything else we want to go on claim leaders, or do we want to move on to our next little subject?
I'm ready for the next subject.
All right. Well, since we were talking about Sauce God and his fantastic ideas, we're going to go into our first sponsored segment of the pod, brought to you by the CZBA Casino. So first of all, I wanted to present you all with my player stock of the week, of the night. You should be pumping all of your fucking money into Sabonis stocks. You need to be getting on him, because let's be so real here. The Kings ain't doing shit next year. He's going to produce. He has produced. He's produced in these awful situations before, and he's like the best guy on that team now. If you want money next year, if you want your money up, you need to be pumping into Sabonis. It would have been Klay Thompson. That would have been my pick. But after the signing, he's a little too high right now. Come back in 3 weeks. We'll see where he's at. And for our bet of the night, I wanted to shout out Baller SP. I think it's absolutely criminal that his odds are so low of winning the championship. I know Will has kind of run away with the first year. I know he's kind of run away with last year. I think we're due for a Will down year. We have Luka going solo. That could affect some things in a good or bad way. And Baller SP always has a trick up his sleeve. He always has something going on. He always has a new player coming in. He has LeBron now, who's just going to fucking pump out assists. He's going to be big money. Joel Embiid's going to play. We want to put money into Baller winning the championship. I think that's the best value play that we can see right now. All right, and that's it for that. Thank you to the casino.
The waiver thing's a big part of that. Like, I know I said I didn't have any more thoughts on that, but like, we really should have spent more time. Like 170 something waiver claims from Baller. Like, and we mentioned this on the last pod, so we don't need to give him too much credit here. This is why you can't bet against Baller, and why I really like Sal's pick of the week. The guy is going to put the most effort in. He's sending the most trades. He's doing the most waivers. And I've often, he's selling that he got on waivers for like real picks and real stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the best part about being a waiver diver is you're not necessarily super tied to the player, right? You hadn't invest anything in them. And so it's even easier to make those deals. So I did kind of want to take a step back and give Baller some flowers there.
No, absolutely. I really think that few injuries didn't happen in that 2025 season, I might not have a ring right now. That would be Baller SP with a championship. Thank God
We'll have to go
that those
back
injuries
and
happened.
look at it someday. We'll have to go back and review it.
Such a Mickey playoff run from me. But I think with that now,
yeah, I wanted to shout out when we're talking about championship odds. I believe Daniel actually has the highest championship odds for this season, slightly more than Will. I believe so in my predictions tab. And with that, I think we can talk about Daniel's pick this year in the draft, and we can pick up where we left off in our last episode. So yeah, I'm gonna get us started here. I've liked Alan Graves for a while. He at times was in my top 5. I probably would have him there in the top 10 over some of the players that went there. The reason I didn't have him higher for the fantasy board was simply because it didn't make value sense to pick him so high. And I briefly mentioned this in our channel that Graves would have been available at 18. And I probably maybe would have gambled on Ty not picking Cam Boozer had I known that for sure. In my mock drafts, I had Graves going a little bit earlier. He's a very complete player. He's a bit too into Christ for me. It's a little concerning. But other than that, he's a very complete player, and he's very humble. And he's also like a draft nerd darling for good reason. And I love his offensive rebounding. And I think when we're talking about all the picks today, so in like the first round, up to a certain point, you're pretty confident that the player is either going to a bad team where they're guaranteed minutes just because of the asset that they've like invested in them. As you get later in the draft, that's where you start to get questions about, are they going to be playing enough for them to be like a great fantasy asset, at least in the short term? And then also like, even if you believe in this player long term, like, are they going to get the minutes to grow and develop into the player that they can be? So I think that today, when we're talking about a lot of our picks, we're going to discuss a lot about, are they going to get playtime? I think Alan Graves probably was in a better situation regarding playtime prior to the Kawhi Brandon Ingram trade. That said, Kawhi is prone to injuries, and Alan Graves is a good player, and their coach is pretty good from what we've seen so far. So I feel confident that Alan Graves is going to return good value in the next 2 years. And I think this is another savvy Daniel pick, who picked Stephon Castle and some other good players last year, or the year before that. Either way, Daniel has made some good picks in the draft that have really paid off for him. I think this is going to be another one of those. Is there a trade?
No, that was my alarm.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, I think Alan Graves is going to be great. I think the only variable for Daniel here, and that's going to be the case for, oh my God, that's going to be the case for a lot of people that we talk about today, is the minutes concerns. But I think the injury situations with Kawhi and Raptors in general, I think he has a good opportunity to play over the next 2 years.
I think he's going to be a guy, we mentioned fantasy points per minute before. I think he's going to be, even if he's only like an 18-minute player, I think Graves is, he's going to be a high fantasy minutes per game player. He gets stocks. That's why he was a kind of the nerd darling, right? He'll rebound, he gets stocks, he'll shoot threes. So I think that was a good pick. I think most importantly, this was his guy, and he got him. To get him at 19 was really good value. I soured on Graves a little bit IRL for the Sixers going into the draft. I was really big on him, and then the body just concerns me a little bit. I don't buy him as a driver, but I also don't buy him as like an enforcer type 4. Like, to me, he's just a super high feel. If the shot's legit, kind of a Nick Batum-esque high feel on offense. I think the team fit here is important. Yes, there's minutes concerns because they're so big and heavy, but also them being big and heavy, and a lot of those big and heavy guys being able to handle the ball, he's going to be able to play in lineups that maybe on other teams he couldn't. Like, I think they could feasibly play 4 bigs with like quickly, and because Barnes can put the ball on the floor, they can get away with it, right? And still look like a modern NBA offense. So I do think he's going to play a decent amount. I would buy stocks on their coach and fantasy players in general on the Raptors. Them and the Celtics, like, I think you kind of can't go wrong having their players. And I think overall, again, him getting his guy there, I think that's a huge win. Because at 19, Like if I offered you the 19th pick in next year's draft, you're not very excited about it. So to get a guy you're super excited about, I think that means something.
Yep. I don't know that there's much else to say about Graves other than, again, keep a close eye on his relationship with God. It's
Yeah.
And speaking of God, Christian Anderson,
And getting your guy, by the way. This is
and
another
getting
get
your guy, Parm's guy. I think Charlotte's in a good situation for Christian Anderson, and also, they traded away LaMelo, so I think he's going to get some minutes. I think he could be a good fit with Con. I don't know that he's immediately going to get minutes just because Kobe White's probably their starting point guard now, but I think he's a good fit with their system. And then if Kobe White or Con get injured, then Christian Anderson's minutes are going to go up. Kobe White has been injury prone in the past, so I think this is a good fit for him. Parham obviously has loved him, so I'm excited to watch the new look Hornets. I think they're going to miss LaMelo, but I think I'm excited to see where they go because I'm happy about the direction they're going in, especially considering they traded Miles Bridges away. Which where is Miles Bridges, by the way?
Suns.
Phoenix, of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like this pick for Parm on top of getting your guy. Like I do think this is a good system for the player. I think the biggest thing with Anderson is like, what is the rim pressure going to look like? The guy chucks threes, high assist player in college. I think, if you had to talk about it, Willie Green's the coach there, right?
No. They switched up. It's Charles Lee. It's the young guy.
Oh, Charles Lee. Yeah, I got it mixed up. I think he's a perfect fit for that offense. I am a little dubious in the non-LaMelo world. How does it all look? And are they getting the same type of threes? I'm not so sure. But I think he's going to be allowed to chuck there. I think they're going to have really good spacing. The way that their bigs run the floor, I think he's going to be actually a pretty decent assist player. So yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I think he's a fun player. He wasn't my favorite guard, but he was Parm's. And so I think, kind of put a bow on that trade for him to get Acuff, who's a high potential fantasy scorer, and then round out that trade with getting Christian Anderson. So that trade being, VJ trading out of 5 and this pick, and 22, I'm pretty sure, for Osser and Edie and 29. I like this for Parm. I think getting a guard here was good. The forwards, if you don't love them, I get passing over them for a guard you like.
Yeah. And then, I don't have much else to say about Christian Anderson other than I think Hornets are going to be a real fun watch this year. I'm excited to see it.
Let's go, Kobe.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. Like if Kobe can handle the point guard load, they may not need to play him very much, Anderson, right away. But if Kobe kind of struggles with that, if he's not a 30-minute player, he's a 25-minute player, I think that really opens it up for Anderson. So Speaking of trades, the 21st pick in the draft was crazy. Like, I don't know if you guys remember it in real time. There were 2 trades that happened at the time of this. So this moved twice. So Ty originally had it and traded it to Parm. Yeah, I think you have these up. So Parm and Ty made a trade, and that sent the Nimhards and a 2020 second for the pick. So 21st plus Dalen Terry for both Nimhards and a 2027 second. And then Parm turned around and traded the pick with Sauce God for how do you pronounce? Is it Salon? Is that how you pronounce his name?
I always say
Saloon.
Saloon. And Yannick, who is hurt, but I really like Yannick as a player, and he's kind of their only true 5, and so he comes back this year. So anyway, just crazy the 21st pick moved twice. I didn't expect that. I do kind of want to separate the trades. I think Ty getting the good Nemhard in this deal and a second, pretty good value by him. We continue to say Ty wins individual trades more often than not. What is he going to do with the big picture? We'll see. But then Parm, and what I felt was kind of an overpay to get to this pick, then trading out of it and getting another player I like. So basically going from Nemhard to Yannick. Saloon's kind of whatever for me in this trade. I know Sauce and Parm both like him, but for me personally, he's a let's see player. I do think there's a role there for him maybe. But I like that. What I didn't understand, and this may just be me, is I'm not a big Lopez fan. But Sauce giving up those two players for Lopez, who I feel like is going to be a similar situation as both of those guys early in each of their careers. I didn't really get the value there. But we'll see. Grizz development. He's definitely a toolsy player. Yeah, we can see. I don't know. VJ, do you have any more like extra takes on Lopez or the trades?
I do, and I don't want to get too big into a tangent of this, but last episode we kind of talked about basketball singularities a little bit. We were referring to Harden, Jokic, these guys that are basketball like singularities in terms of like their very existence on the court, kind of, and the way they play kind of bends how like fundamentally it bends the court shape, but also just like it changes how the opponent defends. It changes how you play. Halliburton, Jokic, Luka, Harden, like these are good guys. Like these are good examples of this. And one thing you can say about all of them is that they're great playmakers, and they can also score at a very high level. Different guys do each of those things differently. But I think if I'm talking about like basketball singularities, it's guys that on the offensive end can do can score at a very high level and also play make at a very high level, and can also score at pretty much all levels. I think Boozer can be that guy in terms of like he can be. He's already shown this. He can be like a great 3-point chucker. He can pass the ball at a high level. He can score inside. He can score in the mid range. He can score outside. There's still room for him to grow, especially in terms of defense and his finishing at the rim specifically. But anyway, my point being that I think Boozer can be like this basketball singularity. And I think that's important when we're talking about players like Kareem. And also I'm going to talk about Richie. Kareem and Richie, I think I'm just going to broadly classify them as play finishers for the sake of this. I think early on in their careers, especially, I think they're going to be play finishers that are playing off of Boozer. So I think this is important, especially for Kareem Lopez, because he's very raw, but he's very athletic. So being able to play with somebody like Boozer, who can make your life a lot easier and take away a lot of the mental load on you and like make you focus on one or two things, I think that's going to make their lives a lot easier because you get to play more basketball in order to develop the things you need to be able to develop at. So I think him going to a good situation with Memphis in terms of their development system, but also being able to play with, I'm just going to call it a singularity from now on, a singularity like Boozer, I think it's very good for him. And I think that's also why I really like the situation for Richie, even though Richie himself is coming off an ACL tear. And then there's some concerning rumors about him going back to college, which I hope are fake. Yeah. I don't buy it either, but that would be fucking insane.
Their roster is just weird. Like I don't want to get too off topic, but like the Pacer or the Hawks not bringing back Kuminga, like there's some bloated rosters that haven't been able to shed guys. I think this is an impact of that as well.
Yeah, but the main thing here being like I can buy Kareem's fantasy upside long term, but I think again the short term minutes, just because he's so raw, like he might be seeing a lot of G League stints early on in his career. I think that's a concern. I don't know that I buy his shot personally. But again, I think Kareem Lopez as a player at this slot is fine. I really dislike what Sauce gave up for him in Giannis, especially because, like you mentioned, Brennan, he's their only 5, and they've got 2 good playmakers. And Clippers have two good playmakers in the guy they just drafted. I'm forgetting his name right now. Darius Garland. Yeah, Wagler and Garland. Like
both
Giannis is going to eat. Yeah, and he was already eating off Harden. Granted, his injury was a pretty serious one. But still, like modern medicine and all that, like Zion had the same injury that KD did with the Jones fracture, which is the same injury that Kareem did. KD lost a whole year. Zion lost like 8 months to it, but Zion returned pretty similar to what he looked, or at least he's like still athletically effective. Like I think you can make the case that Giannis can return and be effective, especially given the context that the Clippers have for him. I really don't like what he gave up here. I think it's a gross overpay considering the variable outcomes that Kareem has, in that if he doesn't grow, Kareem is super replaceable for the Grizzlies, especially considering the amount of assets they have. So I don't like the gamble that he's taken here, and I think I felt the same way about the trade for AJ being a bit of an overpay. I think the one thing you can do to let this slide is like he got his guy, but I'm not there.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I'm not. I don't want Parham to come after me. New Zealand league guys in the draft. I have a hard time getting hype about him, and like for Kareem to have the numbers he did, like he wasn't very efficient there, and it's not for a lack of size. I mean, look at the graphic. He's a big dude. I do think it's cool to have a Mexican player get drafted, where he did. That's all very cool. But the New Zealand league, as far as like a pipeline to the NBA, I haven't been super impressed with the guys coming through there. And him, of all of them, just didn't really wow me. But we'll see. I think your point about Boozer is a good one. I think Richie is especially going to benefit off of it because he's so high feel of a play finisher. We'll see if Lopez is. I think it's probably hard to show that in New Zealand compared to playing with some of these college guys. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the Grizzlies are a safe program to bet on. Boozer's going to make that even easier, probably. So we'll wait and see. But I agree. I think this felt like a stretch by Sauce, but Sauce would probably tell you, maybe he was out on Saloon, which, lottery ticket in my opinion. And to him, Lopez and Yannick, you can make the same arguments of upside and downside. So, I can see that argument. I just personally don't love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can move on to Zuby Ejiofor, which
Zuby.
I really like as a player. Like he's a bit older, which is I think a bit of a concern, but he's just so I love his work ethic on the floor. He's awesome. I think Patino did him some favors. But I think this is a great fit for Atlanta. I think this is a good fit for Koob. I think also like last time we mentioned that some teams that don't have like a star center kind of do this center by committee situation. Whether Zuby plays the 4 or the 5, I think you'll see that he will get minutes. I think the concern again with the minutes here is they have Asa Newell, who they spent a top 15 pick on last year. He's a bit younger and raw than Zuby is, so maybe Zuby will get playtime ahead of him. Maybe Asa Newell is not even in their math, but I think there's a bit of a concern there. But again, the Atlanta center rotation, it being like so spread out between Onyeka, injury history, Jock, good, but he's basically just on a human TPE contract right now, so he's very likely to be traded. Zuby, Asa, and then they also drafted Henry Visar, who I don't rate very highly. This is another guy that Sauce drafted, and sorry Sauce, but I'm not very high on Visar either. I think this is a fine pick for the slot, considering the centers that are there in future drafts. I also like Zuby a lot, so yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's like as exceptional as some of the other picks that Koob has made in this draft, but I also don't know that there was anyone better, especially if you're only looking at centers. That's all I have to say about Zuby.
I love the player. Like he was a guy that I kind of swapped him and Graves when we were doing the Sixers pre-draft. I liked Graves, was really down on Zuby. And then as I got closer to the draft, I actually flipped it. You got to love the body. Yes, he's older, but the body's great. Like he's going to come in and be an NBA 4 or 5 right away. The shot looks weird, but it does go in. It's really the feel. Like the St. John's guys, I don't always really buy. Like I think Patino's just such a good coach, and your point does great favors for them on defense. And I think the league they play in allows them to play pretty physical defense too. But when you watch Zuby, it's not just all effort. Like there's actually some feel in his defense, and he screens really well on offense. He runs to the rim really well. He isn't kind of this black hole, run and cut 4 that I think he had the that's kind of what the PR on him was early on in the process. I really like him. I think he's a good fit for that program too. The Hawks, like they're going to space out the floor. They're always going to have 3 guards. And I think they do a good job, even though Dyson Daniels plays so much and he's not a true shooter. they do a really good job of making space for him and for other players. They're going to run in transition. So I like the fit there a lot. I agree with your point on the center rotation, but I think at the 22nd pick to get a guy like this, I don't know how much he'll grow, but I do think he'll be a pretty good fantasy points per minute player. He's going to get rebounds. He's probably going to get 8 to 10 points. He's going to have a block or two. I think he may even scam a few assists in their offense too, just kind of feeding off other guys. And this was part of Koob traded out of the 12th overall pick and got Bub Carrington, this pick, and then 214, which we'll talk about later. He took Caravan there, which I don't love, but I mean, I think that's a decent haul. I don't love Carrington, but getting Zuby here, I think, makes up for how low I am on Carrington.
Yeah. I think we can move to Sergio De La Ria. As of right now, like I'm not convinced that. Holy shit!
True, actually, I like that picture.
That's got to be AI or like a really good Photoshop.
Do not condone it if it's AI, but if it's not, I like it.
Bro, Google would never show me
AI. As of right now, I think Dallas doesn't really have a long-term PG. I know they did a lot of that Cooper at PG situation last year. I don't think they're going to do that this year, especially with Kyrie back. I don't think it was exceptionally great for Coop. I mean, it was good for fantasy stuff. I think what it really showed was that Coop is a great player, but you kind of want him in terms of ball handling stuff as a secondary engine more than a primary one. Kyrie's obviously coming off an ACL. I think he'll be great this year and next, and maybe the third year after that. But he's really, I think I'm not crazy to say he's not long for the league just because of the injury history. So in my view, Dallas doesn't have a long-term PG. I think this is a good swing because if he ends up staying and if he ends up becoming their long-term point guard, you get to play with Cooper and Merez, who are great players for a point guard to play with. I think because of that, I think this is a great pick. I think what I don't like about this is that maybe this is just my view of Sex Ferguson roster, but I kind of feel like, I guess you could argue like who that player is, but I think I would have preferred he went with Ryan Conwell here just because how close he is to the competing label, because I don't think Sergio De La Ria is going to provide much value over the next 2-3 years, but I think maybe 3 or 4 years from now, like I think you can really see like the upside play here. That said, I think it's a good pick. I rated him pretty highly, especially after his summer league performances where he really showcased a lot of his feel and that maybe his body wasn't as behind as you would have thought. So yeah, I think this is a good pick. I think I might have preferred Ryan Conwell for Sex Ferguson personally.
Yeah, I'd hear that. Sex Ferg just feels like he's always playing with house money. He gets the best lottery luck, and he turns every bad situation into a better one for him. Like I like the swing for like I hear you, but I think the way he's looking at it is like, fuck it. Like I'm gonna go for the higher upside guy. I don't really know what my team's gonna look like with Halliburton come back off injury. VJ, who knows what his role is gonna be. Anthony Black, I think he has a lot of proving himself to do this season of how real he really is. So I like the upside swing. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch a lot of like Sergio actually playing basketball. He's more of a TikTok player for me. But the TikTok I have seen of him is like electric. The summer league stuff was really good. He makes passes. I mean, I didn't really consider him when we were talking about the guards earlier. I said that Mikal is my favorite passer in this draft. I think Sergio actually really is the best passer of the guards in this draft. He makes some reads like that are just so high level. Sometimes it seems like the recipient doesn't even know the ball's coming because he's a second early. And I just think guys like that stick in the league. If you can be a second ahead of everyone else on the court, they're going to find a role for you. And I think May, of all coaches, is going to be patient with him, is going to build structure around him. And they have some size to protect him. So I like it. We'll see. It's kind of a we'll see pick. I do think this is really where the draft started to fall off a bit for me personally. And we'll talk about that some more. So I think going for the swing here at the 23rd pick, I like it because it is kind of getting into the territory of you either take your guy or you're just hoping someone's situation's better than you expect year one for some of these guys.
Yeah, I still think the best passer in the draft is probably for me. I'm just going to quickly rattle them off. I do think Sergio's up there. I think it's Kingston, Boozer on the same level, and then right after, I think it's probably Mikel and then Sergio. I think in that order for me. I think the reason I feel more comfortable with Mikel over Sergio is just the athleticism, and I think also like he'll have some reps to like grow through that maybe Sergio does not immediately have. But I can easily see a world, especially in the context that he's going to play in, that like people are going to think that he's the best passer in the draft, in this draft a while from now. Like especially when you get to play with guys like Merez and Cooper, I think I can see that case. Yeah. But I think we can talk about Malik now. The Cavs roster is so loaded that I don't feel comfortable saying that he's gonna get minutes. I mean he's a great hooper and he's really fun to watch. I honestly thought this was gonna be a Samuel pick, but I think the minutes concerns are like really heavy for me on this one. Apollo, please. The minutes concerns are really heavy for me on this one, but I think if they have some injuries, he can really get a chance to shine. I think this is going to be great in March, but I think again this is just like a dart that I don't think Ty needed considering his roster situation. But I do think this is a good player that probably does have some cachet in our league in terms of a trade asset as well. So
yeah, he's loved. Like I love Malik. Like that was one of my guys. Like I would have been fine if obviously Phylon fell. But I would have loved Malik even at the Sixers pick. I think he's great. He's a Calipari guard, right? Like, there's some stock there. But I agree with you. I don't think he's going to see the court much. I don't know that even if he did see the court much, like, would they rather have Sam Merrill out there than Malik? I kind of think they'd rather have Sam Merrill at least year one, right? Because he's going to play his role. He's going to hit open threes. So, yeah, I don't love the early value. But I believe in the player. So I won't expand too much on that. I like the player, don't love the fit. I think Ty probably needs some more early wins, from the guys he's taking. But if he likes the player, then I can't fault him for going there.
Yeah. I think next up was JQ. We can talk about JQ and Taurus at the same time here.
Yeah.
Holy shit. God damn, he is big as fuck. This guy is fucking massive, by the way. Just an insane body. Like, just absolutely fucking built, considering his age and height. But Apollo, please. Oh my God, Apollo. Okay, 1 second. So yeah, the Spurs obviously have Wemby. Wemby obviously has some injury concerns. So if Wemby goes down, I think Taurus and JQ will get minutes. The issue I have is if Wemby's like healthy, he's gonna get 25 minutes per game. And if Wemby's playing 25 minutes per game, then JQ and Taurus are not gonna get to play with Wemby for the most part, unless they opt to go double big, which is a possibility, especially considering they saw the issues that they faced when Wemby was matched up with Cat. So I think that they're looking ahead and they look at OKC going double big, Rockets going double big, and the bigs that Wemby has trouble with being like the Cat type bigs. I think I can see a world where they might start experimenting with double big. The issue is that in the regular season, I don't believe they have the playmakers or the 3-point shooters to really enable these guys. Their best 3-point shooter is Devin Vassell. Like, that's not good enough for me. Or Keldon Johnson. Either of those are not good enough for me. And I don't trust their playmaking to set these guys up when Wemby's not on the floor. Wemby, I think, is another basketball singularity where like he can make the worst piece of dog shit player look good. But the issue with the centers that the Spurs pick is that they might not get to play with them very much. That said, I think the early returns on Taurus will be good. Just because JQ's injured and he's their only like playable backup center, I doubt they'll be playing Luke Cornett ahead of Tyrus Reed.
No, I think he'll be backup center right away.
Yeah, so I think he's going to get a lot of play there because even if you look at like the 25 minutes per game, that's still like you get to play probably like 23 minutes a game. I think that's the math there.
That's the math, yeah. But let's say 18 to 20, probably realistically, right?
Like I think the early returns on Taurus will be good, but I do believe that they probably have JQ as like higher in their priority for long term.
Well, they took him before him.
Yeah, but also like I just don't think JQ is a real player until I see him play basketball. Like I'm not counting this as a player. This is for me, this is a talent swing, and this is like I think they could do double big with Wemby and Quaintance pick. My issue here is that I just don't think the Spurs have enough good players outside of Wemby to enable these young guys to grow. The other side of it is that they did pick Pigeon picked Jacoby Gillespie later on in the draft, who is a point guard that can shoot threes. He would be the only guy on the Spurs roster that can do that. He's high field. He chucks threes. I think
Champagny chucks. He's just not a point guard.
Yeah, but like I think especially with Wemby, if you have a point guard that can chuck threes, like your life is so easy as that point guard, and also like in terms of the impact you can have on the game. Harper can't
it's
shoot
just not
threes.
their offense.
Castle can't shoot threes. Fox can't shoot threes. Like if you're the point guard that can shoot threes, like you can get a lot of opportunities to grow. So I think Jacoby was a great pick by Pigeon. I really wanted him. I'm sad that I didn't get him. The other side of this is, like I said, I'm not buying Jaden Quaintance as being a real player until I see him.
You drafted him.
I did. It's just like I can't be the guy that's always talking about like injuries and also like turn around and say Jaden Quaintance.
You took
is
a
a real
talent
player
swing. Yeah,
took a talent swing. I had him top 5 like in this draft, even after the ACL tear, but then he just didn't play. So like I don't know how bad the knee is because he just had cleanup surgery on it. Like he might never play a game again. And even if he does play, he has long-term injury concerns. So
I'm a Joel Embiid stan, so 2 years out doesn't bother me. But yeah, it's hard to bank on a guy like that, right? So I don't know. Like I think Terrace is a lot safer, right? Even though he was taken later, I think he's going to be a high rebound guy. I don't know he's going to be a big blocks or stocks guy, but I think he's going to get. Let's say he plays 20 minutes. I bet he gets close to 10 rebounds a game in 20 minutes. Like I think he's that level of rebounder. And in fantasy, 10 rebounds, like you're pretty safely a 20-ish point fantasy game guy, which I think is a pretty decent floor for where he went. Yeah, and then the like real life piece, the way like they play a lot of Nick Nurse ball. So like Sixers fans complained a lot about, we just kind of stand around and then drive. Like it was rim pressure without a lot of movement, just banking on guys driving. They get away with it because they have Fox, Castle, and Harper, who are all pretty good at that, right? Like that is their offense. Guys stand around, Champagny stands in the corner, and those 3 guards are asked to just drive. And so I think, when I was watching Spurs Knicks, and you could even say Spurs Thunder, I think Chet made this obviously less of an issue. The Spurs had 2 problems, in my opinion. Against the Knicks, they both couldn't keep up with the offense. They didn't have enough guys to chuck and score at a high level from 3. But they also got kind of bodied for, I think, really the first time that playoffs. And so they had decisions to make. We have limited moves we can do. I don't love the Tobias Harris pickup, but he is a true 4 in size. And then they drafted 2 centers. I think they just decided we're going to continue to just drive rim pressure as our offense, and we're going to throw as much weight around as we can around those guards and Wemby. So I think Terrace will play a decent amount. I do think they'll explore double big because the way they're set up is they can just have 2 bigs out there, and Wemby likes the perimeter more anyway, and the other guys are just going to drive. So I hear everything you're saying. I think the 3-point volume just isn't really a consideration for them. It's not what they got to the finals doing. Even if it may have been the reason they lost the finals, I think they decided to go the size path. So with that, having stocks and the guys that they put real value in, in the first round to remedy that, if I was the fantasy owner for those players, like I would feel a bit comfortable about that. So I like the Terrace pick. Pigeon, just another example of Pigeon's a pretty steady fantasy player. Koob gets a lot of love for this, but Pigeon's kind of a constant middle lane tender. It does make a lot of trades. Like these are the kind of picks that I think keep Pigeon always kind of around. And yeah, I don't really have too many takes on Jacoby. We'll see, to get him where he did for Pigeon, I think was a good pick. I do think it's interesting. He took both Spurs guys that weren't JQ. We'll see. But I like the Terrace pick to kind of wrap that up.
Let's talk about Koa Pete real quick. I think this is a good pick. And another decent pick by Falk later in the draft. I can see the upside here. My issue is that the playmaking on the Phoenix roster is kind of dog shit. Like Devin Booker is like already overpaid and showing signs of being washed. And like Jalen Green is not a good playmaker. And their only good playmaker that I feel confident about is Colin Gillespie, who does not get enough minutes, especially behind Jalen Green and Devin Booker. And then they got Miles Bridges, who does everything Koa Pete does, but better. Unfortunately, disavow, but that is the case. So I just don't see where the minutes are going to come from and where the service is going to come from for him to do the things that he's good at and needs to do on the basketball floor. I do trust their coach to give young guys some play, but again, I think this is going to be another situation similar to Common, where probably doesn't play much year one, and then maybe year 2 or year 3 he probably gets some play. That said, I think that the bigger issue here is that at this slot, I think Koa Pete does not have enough cachet in this league for Falk to be able to flip him the way he might have been able to flip a Senek or a Sturts or some of these other names that were available here. That I wouldn't, if Koa Pete was Falk's guy, I wouldn't say that like, I just don't feel that Falk cares about him that much. And if you feel that way about it, then why not just draft the guy that's probably easier to trade? But that said, having been a guy with a pick on draft night, I'm not necessarily thinking about how am I going to trade this guy later, personally. Yeah, that's all I got to say about Koa Pete. I'm just not confident in the team context to feel good about him as a fantasy asset.
I think he sucks. I don't really like the pick. I don't like taking a guy that can't shoot a basketball when the game is about shooting a basketball. I don't think, like Ben Simmons, for example, like obviously ended up being a really good player because he did all the other things at a high level. At the end of the day, the game is about putting the ball in the hoop. And if it's not a dunk or a really close layup, like he doesn't really do that. I know he had a decent summer league. To me, a lot of that is he was trying the hardest and he was already one of the best bodies on the court. Jani Broom was putting up like 30 and 15 games. So I'm not really buying too much stock in a 4 doing well there. I do not like this pick. I was like grinning from ear to ear being able to get Senek and Sturts right after this pick, which we won't talk about because we talked about it in the first one. And the roster fit, like I agree, like compounds the issue. Like they don't have good playmakers, but then also like the bigs he's going to play with. You play Koa Pete with Mark Williams or Maliwatch. Like, is that really how you want to have your big setup? I don't think he gives you enough on defense. I don't think he gives you enough on offense. Your 2 bigs are already going to want to be running in the same areas that Koa Pete's running in. So we'll see. It could be wrong. I've tried to be pretty optimistic about most of the guys that we've talked about so far. This is the first one where every time I watch him, I'm just like, I don't see it. Unless you're playing with a singularity, like you said, maybe, it could work because he's just so darn athletic. But this to me screams the Suns took him because Rich Paul told him to.
Dude,
and a normal
it's the owner. I think, like, as you were talking about it, I was like, I'm not sure the coach or the front office believes in this guy because I think the owner pushed for it because he's an Arizona guy.
Yeah. Well, and Rich Paul, I mean, there was a lot of smoke. Remember, the Sixers were supposed to take him because Rich Paul was trying to get promises. And Maliwatch, Clutch Client, is another guy where
they fucking showed that in the video where he was like, I'll get you, Maliwatch.
He bullied him, basically. And I think it was the owner, too, that got bullied, basically, by Rich Paul. So I don't know. We'll see. Like, I think, personally, if I'm the coach and I have Rasheer Fleming and then I have Koa Pete, I would rather put Fleming in to do a lot of the same stuff, right? So, I don't want to be too harsh. We can kind of wrap it up there, but yeah, I don't love the player.
Yeah. We talked about Senek, Sturts, and Richie. I'm going to touch on Conwell real quick. Good player, gets to play in a situation in Miami where they don't have a lot of point guards, and you get to play with Giannis and now Clay and Bam. Like, I think this is a good situation for a young point guard. The only point guard really ahead of him is Davion Mitchell, who's not really a true point guard either. So I think this is a good situation for him. I think he'll get a lot of opportunity to grow this year. Anything to add on Ryan Conwell? I think we're now getting to the point where we can kind of speed through a lot of these. So
I like Ryan Conwell a lot. Like, he was one of my favorite second round guys. I think Sal, this could be a guy that I know he's on your team, but I think you could be a Ryan Conwell guy. Like, I think he's a likable player. He's got a cute face. He chucks threes. He's got a little shake in him.
Hold on now.
So just something to kind of throw out there. I would definitely buy stock on Miami guards. Like, so again, Coop getting
Ooh.
this is one of the few young shooters to play off Giannis on that team. It's him and Pell Larson, and the other guys are all in their 30s, So I like it. I think there's some upside here. I agree we can kind of go a little faster here. But I love the player. I love the fit. I think he'll play a lot. I'm actually a little surprised he went at 30. But at the same time, like, I think Koa Pete, maybe the only guy I would have pushed down. Like, this was just a really good class. To get Ryan Conwell at 30, I think speaks to the depth of this class.
Yeah. Next up was Thornton. I like Thornton a good amount. Actually, when we did the mock draft with Sal, Thornton was one of the guys that I shouted out right after we did the first round as a guy that I thought maybe Dallas would go for because Mousei really loves the small guards. Maybe Dusty May doesn't love them as much. But Thornton's a great player. He's an elite shooter, and he is a great mid-range shooter. He carried a ton of usage in Ohio. He was also their captain. The issue is I don't buy him as much as a defender. I think his body past his height is NBA ready. I think my issue with him is that I knew this kind of going into it. He's kind of a mediocre defender despite his he does get some stocks, but despite his strength, he's kind of a mediocre defender. I think that's maybe something that could improve with time. I just don't feel good about it when I'm watching the games and I'm like, Reed Shepherd is probably a better defender than you right now, which is like not a good thing to feel about a guy that's a little bit older. That's not even to mention like the minutes concerns on the Rockets. That said, at this pick, I think it's good, especially considering Fred's coming off an ACL tear. Marcus Smart, I know people are looking at it like it's a guard. He's a guard, and that might eat up into guard minutes. But I think they're viewing him more as somebody that's similar to the Dylan Brooks role as an enforcer. So I think you will not see Reed's minutes go down. That said, if you don't believe in Reed as a player, I think this is a good player to buy stocks in because he's the only other young point guard on the Rockets roster. Yeah, good player. I think this is a bit of a gamble. That said, I think long-term this is a good pick because I think if Reed works out, then this is the backup point guard on a team with a lot of good play finishers right now and also probably in the future, especially considering the team context. Rockets also paid for him. So I think this is like you can say that he's probably going to get some minutes early on. Even if he's not on the Rockets in the future, I think he's somebody that fits on a lot of teams because of his leadership and his experience. He's a bit older. So I think this is a good pick. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add there.
No, I think you touched it. I don't know that Udoka is going to love him early on, but I do think if you could pick a guard to learn from with his body type, having Fred there, it's a little concerning. You're going to be like 23 and you have to have a vet teach you how to use your giant ass. Like, like that's kind of concerning to me. But I agree with you. I don't think the body's the issue. It's the how to use it part. And you can learn that. So we'll see. Yeah.
Terrace, we talked about. Josh Jefferson. I like him. I liked his stats profile, especially. He's very Draymond-esque in that his fingerprints are all over the game. I think the issue is that there's a lot of guys that are Draymond-esque just because they kind of do everything but nothing very well. And I think he's one of those guys as of right now. He could grow into something better. I'm just not sure that especially considering Randall and Michael Porter Jr. and considering the guys that are ahead of him from last year's draft. I'm not sure what the short-term payoff is. I don't think there is any. Long-term, this is a real gamble, and I feel like there might have been a couple better players here maybe that you could take the gamble on. I think this is a pick that's going to be very forgettable, and I think we'll see him in the waivers within the next 2 years.
So the tie pick for just to confirm that. You may have said that, but yeah, this is a tie pick. I don't know. Like, I'd rather play Randall, Wolf, Sharp, MPJ. Like, the Nets roster is bad, but this is actually the one position where they have options. I don't like this pick for Ty. I mean, I kind of get you don't know the name. Maybe he didn't know the names and he knew this one. He did get a lot of first round love. Went in the first round in the real life. I do know Ty's reached out and was like, hey, I got a lot of guys that went higher in the real draft than where I got them in the fantasy draft. And NBA teams are getting smarter. So like if that's part of your strategy, like may not be a bad one. I personally I don't love the player though.
Yeah, I think this is another situation. I think we're going to get into this a lot here is like, I don't know what the trade value is around the league if it doesn't work out either. Like,
Yeah, because
I don't
people
know
have
that,
preconceived, don't like them, right?
yeah. Caravan, I don't have great opinions on him as a player. That said, Sacramento is kind of a shithole. And last year, who was the center that played ahead of Dylan Cardwell? The white guy? That got a lot of love?
Raynaud.
Yeah, Maxim Reynaud, who's also not a good player in my opinion, but you're in Sacramento, you get a lot of minutes, and then you get a lot of fantasy points, and you're a good player for fantasy. I think Caravan could be in a similar situation to that, just because of the Sacramento situation, and that's kind of how I feel about Sharp, who by the way, some ties to Israel. Which Sex Ferguson, what's going on there? Big
I
Israel
didn't know
guy.
about that.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he's a Zionist, but I think he has some ties to Israel. I think he played for the national team or something. I think I've definitely seen pictures of him in the Israel jersey. That said, it could also totally have just been like a UH fan that's like, I'm going to Photoshop
American.
Emmanuel Sharp into the Israel jersey because I fucking hate Emmanuel Sharp. But
He
again,
was born
both of
in
these.
Tel Aviv. Just looked it up. Gronk confirmed.
Sex Ferguson. What's going on? Sex Ferguson. But yeah, I mean, it's just Sacramento is so weird that I can see these random guys that maybe I don't rate as players in real life that just get a lot of minutes and get a lot of opportunities to farm fantasy points. Next up, Nick Martinelli. I actually don't know anything about this guy, and I was shocked when Nick picked him, and Brendan said, this is a really good player. So I'm going to give it over to Brendan.
Yeah, he has. So you're talking about guys that'd be hard to trade later. Nick Martinelli actually has some pretty big fans in the Discord, in the league. I'm one of them. I know Daniel Parm both really like him. Nick obviously liked him. He took him a lot higher than he went in real life. He's not quite. I would say Richie and him are similar to me as far as the type of guys I was looking for in the second round. I think Richie's like a tier above Nick Martinelli. But when I watch Nick Martinelli play, he is an older player. He's 22. He's played 4 years in college. He was asked to do a lot of different things. And this may just be like the Mike Gansey pill in me. I'm starting to really, really appreciate taller guys. So he's like 6'7", 6'8", that have had to wear a lot of different hats, and show that feel. Like he's a bucket. He is a problem. Now, it wasn't Northwestern. I do rate Northwestern as a basketball school. But he also played like off ball too. Like he's done on ball, he's done off ball. So I like, his combine, like athleticism numbers are pretty good. Had a really good shuttle, has really big hands. His reach and wingspan are good. Like I think this could be a steal for the Clippers at 55 overall, and even for Nick here. The Clippers don't really have a lot of players to invest in right now. I think they signed Nick Martinelli on a real deal. I'll have to look at that. But I'm always going to bet on a 6'8" guy that carried the load in college, and isn't a total negative athletically in the second round. I have some questions about those guys in the first round. I don't know how valuable a shooting high touch 4 is if they don't really play defense and they aren't a great rebounder. But as far as a role player goes, I like the swing here. Definitely a guy you don't know much about, and then you watch him play and you're like, oh wait, this guy's kind of nice. And that's Nick Martinelli's pretty nice.
Cool. I should probably watch some tape. This is the second time I've heard you say
you'd like him.
Nice.
He's a high free throw rate guy and super efficient. He's not a 3-point chucker, which may be why he didn't get a ton of love, from the nerd community. But the free throw rate is real.
I'll have to check him out. And then Baba Miller, I got some slop in during the season that I don't know, maybe it was somebody in the Discord or somebody from my group chat. I say my group chat, it's just a group chat that I'm in that's Rockets related. But I got news that Rockets worked out Baba Miller, which made sense to me at the time because we kind of needed center depth. It's just that he's not anything crazy. He's just like a tall guy that can move. He just doesn't really do much else. I think he's kind of mid. I believe he went to the Clippers, I want to say off the top of my head, and then I think he went back to college after that.
Did he? I thought he stayed.
No, I think one of the players that the Clippers drafted immediately went back to college. It might have been Baba Miller or it might have been somebody else. But either way, I think this is, if Yannick takes some time, maybe he gets some play early on if he's still on the roster. Which
He
might
signed a
give,
4-year deal, just to,
Okay.
for the record.
cool. Okay, so I must be thinking somebody the Clippers drafted immediately told him to fuck off and went back to college. But yeah, Bob Miller might get some good early fantasy value if Yannick's injury keeps him out for maybe longer than we're expecting. But yeah, I think there's just a 7-foot guy that can move. So I don't have much else to say here. I think it's fine for where he was picked. I don't know that there were many better players, especially if you consider the Clippers point guard context. Again, we've talked about that a couple times today, so I'm not going to harp on that. You want to talk about Trevin Brazil?
Yeah, I really like him. This was a Parmenai guy through the pre-draft process. Older player, gets some knocks for being a low field guy, but I'm banking on the athleticism. The shot is real. He was a good role player on a pretty decent Arkansas team. But what I really like is he's playing with Jokic, and I think Aaron Gordon's getting phased out. I'm not saying Trevin Brazil is going to be Aaron Gordon. Like, one, he doesn't quite have the body for it, and he definitely doesn't have the feel for it. But he shoots, he rebounds, he runs, he cuts. It's kind of the guy at that size you want to play off Jokic. So at this point in the draft, like, to me, you're either taking a guy that has a proven NBA skill that you can bank on, or you're taking a guy that's well-rounded and has really strong team fit. And that was what I felt I was getting out of Brazil here.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add there also is Peyton Watson's not there anymore. Aaron Gordon's calves are completely fried. They strain every year. So I think there's a good chance that he has some fantasy value this year just off the fact that he'll get minutes. And then again, when you're a guy that's willing to be a role player that's playing with the singularity, that can get you a lot of cachet in the league and also in the fantasy world. Let's talk about Isaiah Evans. I fucking hate this pick for Ty. I feel so strongly about this. We talked about this a little. Yeah, this is my co-op because it's like, first of all, by the way, he completely like nuked Duke's run by having a horrible game. They really could have gone further. I'm not saying that Boozer was faultless in that.
I was gonna say, is this some Boozer bias? Is this an agenda?
I mean, no, but it's just okay. The real reason I really don't like him is because he's a guy that a lot of people love because he's a guy that makes shots. You're a guy that makes shots on Duke. You get a lot of love. And draft night, everyone's like, why is Isaiah Evans falling? Why is Isaiah Evans falling? And if you look at it, he does nothing for the team impact. Like when Isaiah Evans is on the floor, he's like not doing anything for your team other than make shots. There's a lot of guys that can make shots. But a lot of those guys that can make shots also do other things well on the basketball floor. And even if you're not yourself the guy that's like impacting those other things, he has like zero or negative impact on team fluence. He has zero good team fluence that's significant, and all he does is make shots, which is a really fun player for people to watch. I understand why he has fans, especially when he played for Duke. He's just not that good at basketball. And then he goes to Minnesota, which is another situation where, he's gonna he's not gonna get much minutes, and everyone's gonna be like, why isn't he getting minutes? This you know what this is to me? This is Rob Dillingham again.
That was one of my takes. I said the same thing. Yeah.
It's just Rob Dillingham again. Like you go to a big school, you make some shots, and then you go to
both
Minnesota
on Ty's roster, by the way.
Yeah, and then he's not going to get played by Chris Finch, and everyone's going to be like, "Why is Chris Finch not playing him?" And then eventually he'll get some minutes, and he'll play like dog shit, and everyone's like, "Oh, if Chris Finch just played him more, he's going to be better." No, he's not. He's not good. Anyway,
I like him a little bit. I don't disagree with anything you said. I'm just not quite on the I hate him. I do think his skill set's a little redundant there. Like Bones Highland and Io are going to do the stuff that and plus more, that he would be asked to do there. So, I didn't love the pick for the Wolves, and I don't love the pick for Ty either. Like another guy that's not going to have any short-term value. You're basically Ty is going to be a year from now wondering once again, who should I drop? Who should I trade? Because none of my guys have real roles yet. And I'm just waiting to see more. So I didn't love the pick.
Yeah, I mean, granted, there's not that many better players at this point, so
True,
I can't
true.
hit Ty too much. But it's
Yeah.
also like you didn't need to have this pick. Like look, he traded for this pick. Oh my god! Again
he
with
traded
this,
Sal's next year's second for the pick.
yeah. Which like no disrespect, Sal, but I wouldn't have done that. Like
He's calling out your
granted-
team, Sal.
That's fucked up. It's whatever though. Kiss the ring.
Fair enough. Like when you win a ring, like I can't talk shit to Sal. He's won a ring, but
2, but they'll never count the first.
As the co-owner,
Yeah,
I
I
think you
believe
can
that
count
should
that.
count.
I
Bro,
count it. I
Card
respect
You're part of the
Commissioner is
team.
not counting in at all. It's fucked up.
just
Who got
real
Shake
quick.
Milton onto that team? Not well.
you did.
I'll
I'd
say
at least
that
give you
much.
half. I'd at least give you 1.5 rings.
Thank you. See,
People have this like stigma against co-owners. I think co-owners are really important. And people say like, oh, when you want Junk to be a co-owner, that's fucked up. I'm like, I have great respect for co-owners, and maybe that's why I feel
Yeah.
differently about it. And maybe if you think that I'm disrespecting Jay Young by asking him to be a co-owner, maybe you should look internally and see why you feel such a way about co-owners. I'm just saying.
whoa.
But first of all, I would count that ring. Second, like
Thank you.
even if I agree with Ty's idea of the darts, I don't know why you want a dart at this stage of this draft. I don't know why you want Isaiah Evans specifically. I feel like at this stage there were still better darts. Henry Visar went right after this. I think that's a better dart than Isaiah Evans because I don't think Henry Visar is a good player, but I think for fantasy purposes, I trust that he'll actually get some play this year, especially if you look at Jock Landale, almost guaranteed to be traded this season.
To the Sixers,
and
yeah.
I don't think you guys can afford him because he has the TPE and you guys don't have the taxpayer exception, I don't think. But he literally has the taxpayer exception salary, like the exact number.
Yeah, we can
So-
send that out. But anyway, I just had to throw that in there.
But yeah, like so I think there's some like fantasy upside for Visar, even if I don't believe in him as a player long term. But I don't see the fantasy upside for Isaiah Evans, especially if you consider the history. I think this was guaranteed a case of Ty being like, this is a guy that a lot of people like. And it's pretty late in the draft, and I can throw a dart at Isaiah Evans. I think if you just look at it again in isolation, it's like this is fine, probably. But if you look at the draft in totality, I just don't think it makes much sense for him at this stage.
I
yeah.
do want to so you traded a 2027 pick. I've been a critic of the 2027 draft, but really at the higher end, I think the 2027 draft is going to have a lot of the same type of guys we liked in the second round of this draft, like peppered throughout it. There's going to be a lot of older college players that have pretty good feel, have decent skill. Like the 2027 draft, that Sal second, you could get a pretty similar like role player level guy to the same guys we're talking about tonight, right? So to turn it into a dart throw on a guy who, like, let's say hits his like best possible outcome and it's like Buddy Hield. How good of a fantasy player really like is Buddy Hield, right? And having to pick those games is a little iffy. So I not my favorite dart throw, but again, I will say he took him at what is this the 38th pick in the draft. So I feel bad crushing it too much, right? I think the big picture you mentioned is really what ties it. Ties it in.
I think this pick specifically, I don't think this is going to be anything memorable for Ty or anyone in the league. It's just like another symptom for me of like the exact kind of player I really dislike at the moment. But yeah, maybe he just puts the ball in the hoop enough that none of this matters. That's possible.
Yeah, he might.
We can go to the next page. I think there's only a couple players that we really need to talk about. Visar, we talked about. Veslevad, I know nothing about.
He went back overseas, I'm pretty sure.
Got it. Ugona Onyenso, I drafted him. He's a center that can move really well. There was this graph I saw of like centers that are like really mobile. So they basically showed their blocked shots and how far back they were versus where they ended up to block the shot. So like, let's say you're in the middle of the paint and somebody shot it from like the 3-point line. It would show the line of like where you started before you blocked the shot and like where you ended up. Basically showing center mobility. Merez obviously like graded really high on that because he's an extremely mobile shot blocker. Ugona was another one of those. So that's one of the reasons why I picked him. My center was an issue for me.
Real NBA skill, like when you get to this point, third round, you're looking for a guy that has an NBA skill, and the shot is going to be pretty real day one.
Yeah.
It's like, that's all you can really ask for at this point.
Yeah, in hindsight, I think I probably would have gone Gillespie, just because you're a point guard that can shoot, that gets to play with Wemby at some point. Rafael Castro, by the way, I think just today signed a 2-way with the Rockets. And then the other thing I wanted to call out was Kadir Copeland probably not going to get minutes early on. And then is there anything else I wanted to call out personally on this page? Not really. I think a lot of these guys that we're seeing now are probably going to be best saved for the Parm Sauce second round dart or the waiver dart episode. Which I think will be a lot of fun for a lot of people. That said, I think a lot of these names that we're seeing here are of that ilk. Samuel, I'm sorry. We did spend some time on your team today, but half the picks in this specific round were all you, and we are not going to spend any time talking about those, I don't think.
Let me see. Dylan Mitchell's interesting, but I'm pretty sure he's a Thunder guy. No, Celtics. So Celtics, interesting wing. I don't know a ton about him, but he was someone I was looking at. Jaden Bradley, I know a bit more about because he got in Braden Burry's way a lot as the playmaker. He was kind of the lead guard for most of the game for Arizona. So he's kind of interesting in that he can do point guard stuff on the Raptors, who need some ball handling. I don't know. I agree with you. Samuel made a lot of the picks here. I don't know a ton about him, but Samuel is pretty plugged in. And he's really good about flipping these guys, like Derek Queen, for example, turn into Steph. I know that's way different type of player value, but I could see these guys being moved. I do like that he took a Raptor, and I like that he took a Celtic. You're either picking an NBA skill or you're picking an NBA team that often kind of raises the floor of these guys here in the third round.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, since we're on the topic of Daniel, and also I just want to shout out, like, he's one of the best rosters in the league. He was just in the finals and unfortunately lost. I feel a certain sense of personal responsibility there, especially because I was responsible for 2 of the trades that he made that ended up not working out. That would have been perfect for the finals in Steph and Michael Porter Jr. Granted, some of that wasn't my fault, but also, like, I just want to shout out Samuel because he really completely turned around his build in the 2024 draft. He got Castle at like 14. He got Derek Queen, and which he turned into. Wait, was Derek Queen the year after? Derek Queen was the year after. Yeah. Derek Queen, he turned into Steph, but he fucking hit everything in the 2024 draft. Like, you can look at the 2024 draft for Daniel, hit after hit after hit, and it completely changed his build. And now he's a contender, which I'm just saying, like, if you're a bad team or if you're a middle of the pack team, you just need one really good year in terms of hitting everything. And granted, that's easy for me to say, but if it's possible is all I'm trying to say.
Well, on the reverse of that, there were 4 teams that didn't make a pick at all in this draft. Sal, you were one of them, and you can see here you traded your only pick, Arthur Kalumas, who ended up being taken by Baller, for Justin Edwards. I do want to say Jared Allen, Mikal Bridges were 2 players you had traded some of your picks for in previous trades. So obviously, real NBA players for picks. Will is another player that did not make a single pick in this draft, just won a ring. He probably does need some youth on his bench, but, like, I'll kiss the ring. He just won. Like, did he really need to make a pick in this draft? His team is freaking insane. So probably not. Flop did not make a pick in this draft, which was a little weird. Flop's made some. We don't have time to talk about it on this one. We'll do it when we get to the divisions. But Flop's an interesting team to look at. Ever since he started working at the YMCA, some of his trades have been not normal for him. I do think we'll need to look at his past trade history. He may be a fatty merchant, so has his trade gotten worse since Fatty left the league? And then the last player is Peyton. Did not have a pick in this draft either. And Peyton's a team who is kind of like Pigeon, where he's kind of just right there. And I think the point you just made, VJ, about if you hit on a few picks, all of a sudden you can go from just being right there to like a top 4, top 5. His team's one where, man, I felt like if he would have had a pick or two and he hit on it, his team could be talked about at that level. So it was a little interesting that he didn't have a pick in this draft.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say there is, like, you could say the same for trades, like if you just hit on a few trades. So
Yeah.
the Daniel one, for example, Steph and MPJ are obviously like big swings. But if you look at it from Daniel's perspective, the opportunity cost of not trading for them is much higher than any risk of you like losing value in that trade. For example, with Steph Curry for Derek Queen, like there's a chance that Derek Queen turns out to be this amazing player that's always putting up whatever he's putting up. I think at one point he was putting up 30 fantasy points per game for like a good stretch. But what is the opportunity? Like if Derek Queen is not that this year, what is the opportunity cost? Because if you just flipped Derek for Steph, and Steph actually ended up playing in the playoffs in our fantasy league, all of a sudden he might have won the championship.
Yeah, you
right?
make that deal every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the opportunity. Like, I think a lot of times when we're discussing trades with people, it's easy for us to look at the trade in isolation. But I think something that I personally think haven't had to think about yet, but I think there's some people that I've talked to that have had to think about it, is like the opportunity cost of not making a trade that maybe you don't feel so good about. But like it gives you the opportunity to go for a championship, even if you don't necessarily, like maybe you lose long-term equity by losing Derek Queen, but it gives you a real shot at the championship right now today. So something, especially in a dry trade market, which I've been feeling real shit about personally, I think maybe if people started thinking about the opportunity cost of making trades or not making them, I should say, I think that might get the market moving. Just think about the opportunity you're losing.
Yeah, trade 3 first for Julius Randle. He's worth it.
Right now. And
Right
actually,
now.
while you're at it, throw 2 more picks for Brandon Williams.
Yep.
Give it to Baller
hell
right
yeah.
now. Give him. He deserves
But this
it.
was a fun draft. I definitely think we're in a bit of a drought, but like as far as like the night of the draft, there were a ton of moves, man. And some teams, I
Yeah.
think we talked about it. I think we spent 3 hours on this draft now. When we get to the division previews, I think we're going to come back to this draft a lot. The moves that were made, the picks that were made. This completely changed the league. And I'm interested to see how it ends up playing out. But it was a fun draft. I think 2027 is going to have a hard time living up to it, because I think there's going to be a little less player intrigue. But we'll see. I think, VJ, you said this on the last pod, like when it turns draft day, you just want to make a move. And like you get married to a guy, even if you didn't believe in him 3 months before. So I love the draft. I think some teams are smart to wait to make their moves till the draft. Ty, for example, I think he got the most value because he waited till the day of. So yeah, so it was fun. It was fun to talk about.
Yeah.
I agree. I can hand it off to our gracious host to bring us to curtain close.
All right. Well, I think that's it. I don't know. I'll talk more next time probably. But who needs to talk when we got these 2 incredible analysts? We'll be back next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Probably trades, I'd imagine. We didn't dive too deep into the big moves of the summer. So we'll see you next week, and we'll see what's up with that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen. Until next time.